As I've said in previous recent segments of our program, this is the time of year that in the United States most people are off of school, have a break from the school years. And at least for the next few episodes, I do want to focus on how to make the best use of that time. Now, one of the things that I found as I have taught in public Montessori schools, as I've visited other public charter schools, visited private Montessori schools, I have found we have a very pervasive problem as Montessori educators, and that is overtiredness, overextending ourselves, and burnout. And a lot of educators do use the summer to attempt to kind of recuperate and get themselves back in a good space, as well as, of course, connect with their families and other aspects of their lives that they may have been neglecting during the school year. And I encourage you to make that your first priority. If you're watching this, you must have some interest in Montessori education. You are probably planning to do it in some regard with your own family or with your students or as an administrator in a school. Take care of yourself during your breaks, whether it's a break between school years, a mid-year break, a spring break. Make that a priority. In the last episode, I talked about how to use the time right at the end of the school year to make sure that you don't forget the problems that occurred that maybe never got solved to the degree that you would like. I would encourage you, if you don't do anything else before you put school away for your break time, is do that. Take time to do that. Take a half an hour. Just jot down the things that you want to make sure that you address before the next school year starts, and then put it away. Go on vacation, lose yourself in a book, go for walks, get to know your dog, train your dog, whatever it is that will make you happy. And I am going to encourage you, however, to do one other piece. If you're not planning to take the entire break, to just leave school aside until it starts again, set up a time frame for yourself. Set up a time that either on your own calendar or a friend, an accountability buddy. I like to talk about those when we want to make changes that are a little bit difficult for ourselves. Have an accountability buddy where the two of you are going to check in with one another at the time you want to go back to paying attention to school. Maybe it's in just a couple of weeks. Maybe it's in a few days. You make that decision, but then you'll have a way to say, hey, I'm just going to put it away entirely for now, and then in a week, in 3 weeks, I'm going to pick it up and do a little bit. And then you can make better choices about how to best use this time. So in this segment, what I want to do is talk about that. I want to talk about prioritizing how you're going to prepare for the next school year. And there are some pieces that I think are really essential based a lot on where I see educators not doing what they need to do. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the information that you need to have available in your classroom, both for yourself and for your students, and the information that you need to absorb in a more holistic way to be ready to serve your students really well. And I'm going to start with that one. So in Montessori, there's kind of two sets of information that you need to make yourself aware of, you need to internalize, you need to process within yourself so that you're willing to make a different way of being in the classroom. For most of us, we weren't brought up through a Montessori classroom, so we have to make changes. It's not just doing the same thing we're used to. Maybe you grew up making breakfast with your family, and when you make breakfast, you just do it the way that you learned. There's a muscle memory. With most of us, Our muscle memories are not Montessori. They're not Montessori education. They're something else entirely. So you have to put a little effort in there. And there's two kinds of information that you need to internalize deeply. One is the way of being in a classroom, the Montessori approach to that careful balance of nurturing the children, not intruding, not abandoning. That's the first set of information. The second set is the information you're sharing with the children, the understanding of zoology, the understanding of the phonetic patterns in the language. Those are the two sets of information that you need to have deep inside yourself if you're going to be an effective Montessori educator. Now, if you've got very much experience listening to me, then you probably, or reading my blog or anything else, you probably know that thanks to Sharon Caldwell, I am a really big fan of recommending this book by Dr. Montessori as a place for people to start. And I'm now recommending it as kind of a touchstone. If faculties are from different trainings and they want to come together philosophically and have some discussions about what Montessori is, it can be really helpful to have a common frame of reference, something that everybody's read, something that people can discuss topic by topic, but that it's not too big of an overwhelm. It's manageable. And that is what I think this book can be. It can be what you recommend to parents. That's what it was written for. What you should know about your child. It's written for parents and for them to understand. But I would suggest this is a good book to have that everybody reads, whether it's everybody on your faculty, if you're in charge of a Montessori training and you let your trainees make some choices about which books that they read by Montessori, by other respected authors in the field. I think that's a great approach, but I think there needs to be somewhere everybody's on that page, and this is what I suggest. So if you have not read this book, or if it's been a few years since you've read it, I would suggest this is a great way to kind of touch base with those essential Montessori principles of how we interact with children of any age. It addresses children of different ages and different topics about them, but it works for any age group that you might be teaching, to just double check yourself there. Now, I am also in the process of putting together resources for schools that have educators at all different levels. Educators who are brand new to Montessori education, maybe have just finished their training, and in some of our public Montessori schools, educators that haven't even had their Montessori training yet. Maybe they're a certified teacher in the certification system for their state, but they haven't had the Montessori training yet, because we have a need for a lot of educators in the United States right now. So I'm going to have a program that lets those educators kind of hit the ground running. Lesson plans, sequences of materials for them to practice before they would be using them with the children. And the way that I'm going to set this up is the idea that you prepare about 2 months out. So if you are watching this in June or July, then you would be doing the planning for the start of the school year at this time. So the things that you're studying right now, maybe the materials that you're putting together, would be the things you're going to present right at the beginning of the school year, assuming your school year starts the end of August or the beginning of September. And the recommendation that I'm going to make now for materials is in the area of what we call, the recommendations that I'm going to make for the information that you share with the children is in the area of what we call cosmic education. Now, if you're teaching children 3 to 6 or younger, you need to have some understanding of cosmic education so that you can share the wonder that comes from having a deep understanding of the big history of our planet and our universe. You don't need to necessarily be sharing those details, but it needs to be part of what informs the way that you teach them about the animals and the plants and the stars and the things that in their young minds that they can reach with their senses. I do believe that up until about 5 or 6, everything that you teach needs to have some connection to the senses. So I believe in teaching the stars, because I hope that at night you take your own children, or if you can, your students, when there's events at the school, maybe in the evening, out to look at the morning star and the evening star, and have that be a part of how you share with them. And so I'm going to recommend some specific books for that big history orientation. Now, especially if you're kind of new to this idea of big history, don't be afraid to just start with the children's books. Some of the children's books that I'm going to recommend are wonderful. They have very good factual information, they are engaging, and they're deep in their own way. So they would certainly allow you to get a good understanding of the material, even if that's all that you use this summer. I will recommend some adult books, as some books for adults as well. So this is From Lava to Life, Book 2, The Universe Tells Our Earth Story. Now this is the second in a series. Born with a Bang is the first one, and I would recommend the entire trilogy to help you to understand big history and be able to share that perspective with the children and share the actual details if you're teaching at the elementary level or above. Bang, How We Came to Be, that's another one. Life Story by Virginia Lee Burton is an old one and a good one. Now, this one, it's very likely that unless you have inherited materials from a school that started a long time ago, you may not have access to it, but it's part of the Montessori Explorer series from several decades ago, and it's still a beautiful book if you have access to it. Now, one of the things that I do like about the booklets by Doug and Claudia Mann is that they are very easy for you to understand and for the children to understand. The size of the print, the vocabulary is such that it's very accessible to the children. That's true for some of the other children's books that I'm recommending, but it is especially true for these. Now, one of the things that I would encourage you also to be doing as you are spending this time preparing and thinking about the subjects that you're going to be teaching is understanding what restraints there may be, and how you need to make sure that you are not creating problems for yourself. And the reason that I say this in the context of big history is that in some school districts, the idea that of evolution, the idea of the interconnectedness of all the primates, meaning that we as humans are primates that are very connected, even as our ancestors being closer to other primates like the chimpanzee and the gorilla than to, say, other animals, but that there is a connection there, that can be a really difficult topic for some communities. Maybe this is the first year of your Montessori school. Maybe you just can't go there this year. That's okay. I encourage you to take the long view. Connect with your parents. Connect with your community. Help them see the beauty of Montessori before you kind of push the bus a little bit. If you can teach early humans, if you can teach the interconnectedness in the way that it's taught in Montessori elementary trainings, I encourage you to do that, but I would say don't push it. Don't try to teach the entire curriculum at the expense of the relationships that you're wanting to build in your community. And I'll deal with this some more in some other segments of our program. So the last two pieces that I do want to recommend in this segment, this is a Doreen Kindersley book, Prehistoric Life, The Definitive Visual History of Life on Earth. If you are ready to spend some time with some pretty heavy duty material, this is a nice one. And one reason it's nice is that if you read some of the children's books on big history and then something catches your imagination, maybe you are fascinated by the idea that there's so many different kinds of trilobites, then you can use this book to look into trilobites and kind of mimic the way that your children will be exploring, I hope, in your classroom in the next school year. And the last piece that I'm going to mention is that as you are working with information, it's really a good idea to start building your reference material that is personalized for your classroom. Again, if you've seen very much that I've done, you may have already heard this idea of a master notebook. Now, if I'm just teaching children ages 6 or younger, I usually just have my own master notebook that's for me and the other adults in the classroom. But for children who are able to read, I usually have more than one. And the reason it says Learning Ninjas is that was the name of the class at the time that this master notebook was put together and was used. These are quick references. They can have everything from the correct pronunciation of your parents, if that's a problem for you, to any other information that you or the children need to be able to access quickly. Now, this is kind of connected to that idea that I said that even if you're not going to do anything else with school for a while, to have that list of problems that you want to solve, that's one of the reasons that I'm mentioning these, even though I deal with them a little bit more in other places. If there are things where you're noticing, I was always having to look up that phone number, or those pronunciation of those leaf names just caught me up all year long, that's the kind of information you're going to want to put in your master notebook. So prioritize carefully, prioritize your self-care, getting your energy strong and yourself excited about your students and the way that you're interacting with them in the Montessori classroom, and then make it a priority to revisit the essential principles of Montessori education and of the topics that you will be addressing next year. Not that long ago, I was in the position of taking over the responsibility for being the lead educator in an upper elementary Montessori classroom in a public school, a charter public school. And it was a huge responsibility. I found that it challenged me on several different levels. I had a lot of Montessori background. I had taught older children within an elementary classroom that mostly included younger children, but that was my first time teaching children from age 9 to 12 and being responsible for the Montessori curriculum for children who would be the equivalent of 4th, 5th, and 6th graders in the United States. Not only was I responsible for teaching them the Montessori curriculum, but I was also responsible for the state standards for this school where I was teaching, because that's the nature of teaching Montessori in a public school. And I found myself completely overwhelmed. If it wasn't parent communication or a behavioral challenge in the classroom or not knowing how to keep track of the progress on all of those state standards for which I was responsible, making sure the children made progress, it was just the whole situation of that new routine. I have found that if you do everything for someone, it's not a good thing. They don't learn very well, but I've also found that if you expect someone to do more than they can possibly do in the hours that they have available, they are definitely not going to succeed nor serve the children in the best way. So I have created something that I am calling a Montessori co-op, a co-op for consulting that allows those schools that have educators starting out or who are very new to the Montessori classroom to have some of those responsibilities done for them and to have a way to check in, a way to have observations done by an experienced Montessori educator who can give them good feedback and help them learn how to find the solutions that they need. If you are looking for parent newsletters, lesson plans, correlation from the Montessori curriculum to the Common Core state standards of the United States, this is something that I can help you with. Our cooperative can allow you for a very reasonable amount of money to have some of these things done for your teachers. Allow them to be at their best. Allow them to learn from where they're starting. Meet them where they are. Let them have Montessori education be as joyful an experience as you are seeking to provide for the students in your school. If we can help you, we are happy to be that resource that lets your students and your teachers make the most of the coming school year. are getting ready for the school year, it makes sense to start at this time with the things that you would be doing right at the beginning of the school year in your classroom. Any setup that you're doing there. And in this segment, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those specifics, some of those materials, but I'm mostly going to be talking about them in the context of what I've called a transition classroom. What this means is those students who may be in the classroom for the first time as an older student. The way that Montessori education works, ideally, I guess we could say, is that children do have 3 years in the children's house. That's the environment for children 3 to 6. Then they have 3 to 6 years in the elementary environment, depending on whether or not you have a lower elementary and an upper elementary, and that's kind of the flow. For many children, in the United States at least at this time, that's not the way that they're introduced to Montessori education. So in this segment, I'm going to talk about how you might manage working with a group that hasn't learned to be respectful of other people working at their own pace and on their own projects. If a student comes into Montessori and they're used to being told how to move as a group, given instructions approximately every 12 minutes in my experience, they're going to have some learning just to how to be respectful in this community that runs in this different way. And they're going to have to learn and develop the skills of self-management. They're going to have to, over time, become more and more adept at choosing their own activities, completing those activities on their own, rather than kind of running on a series of bells and external instructions. So at the beginning of the year, if you are in an elementary environment, you would be introducing the beginning of the universe and the earth. This typically extends out into studying planets, stars, volcanoes, and rocks on the earth. So I guess you could say physical sciences is one way to think about it. And those would be the kinds of materials that you would have on the shelf for the children to explore over and above the basic stories of how the earth came to be and the stories of stars and things like that. So volcanoes would be one of the things that you would probably have some work out pretty soon. And one of the reasons that I'm showing you these things is particularly if you have students who are new to choosing their own work, you're going to have to set up your environment so it attracts them. You're going to have to set things up where as they look around, they say, oh, that book looks like it might be fun to read, or oh, I remember we have some cards about the volcano and the different things that it's called, and maybe we have a work about different kinds of volcanoes. Using little stands like these can allow you to set your classroom up so that the children are drawn into the work that's on the shelves. Now, some of these you can get just at a regular craft store. I believe this is more a display, like a retail display item. I lucked out and got mine at a thrift store, but I do believe that Montessori Services has these or something like it if you need those to be able to set up in your classroom a little bit. I am going to encourage you, as you're thinking about the start of the school year, to think about how you're going to display things in the classroom. Now, I have here a puzzle. It's called Oblot, and the reason that I use it will become apparent in a moment, but it doesn't come with a stand. So how do I set it up in the classroom? Well, if you're a fan of creme brulee and you shop at a U.S. store called Costco, you may recognize the little container that I have it sitting in, because that's where that came from. It's a creme brulee dish. But this is just a spool from tape, from some packing tape that was used up. Anytime that you can have a more attractive, natural material for your setup in your classroom, I would definitely say to use it. But the reason I'm showing you both is it's better to have a way to contain it that's maybe not beautiful, but doesn't detract too much, than to not have anything at all. And along that line, again, if you are a Costco fan, you may recognize that this is a container for biscotti, a coffee a cookie that you dip in coffee. And this is an alternative for storing maps and charts in your classroom. And one reason that I'm mentioning it in this segment is notice that the chart or the map is very visible because it is transparent. So if you are having children new to the Montessori classroom, you're going to have to draw them into the work on the shelves. Now, I will show you the oblong and why I'm showing it at this particular time. It's not, I don't think, overtly meant to be a model of the structure of the earth, but that is kind of inadvertently what it is because it's in layers. And it's got the crust and the mantle and the outer core and the inner core. Now, one reason that I love, and I would take it apart the rest of the way, but there's no way that I can film and do this and have the free attention to keep my presentation to you going and do this puzzle. That is not true for a lot of the children that you will have in your classroom. I like this puzzle because it helps me to see the children that have a particular skill set, the children that are able to have a kind of a visual memory that allows them to take things apart and put them back together successfully, and to a lesser extent the manual skills that go with it. If you have children new to the Montessori classroom, it's really important that you have opportunities for them to succeed. They may not be reading as early or as well as some of their classmates who may have been in Montessori longer. They may be in Montessori because the other system wasn't working for them. And so their parents weren't looking for Montessori, their parents were looking for other. Their parents were looking for better, and this seems better than what we had. And so they may not be sold on Montessori. So you're going to have to make a special effort with those children to make sure that they feel successful, to make sure that they're having a good experience in your class. Now, I'm going to mention one more thing about the environment before I mention a way to manage a class that maybe has some children who are more comfortable and familiar in the Montessori classroom and less comfortable. This is my pencil box. It's my very favorite pencil box, and again, thrift store find, but I would encourage you to look for ways for the children new to a Montessori classroom to be successful in maintaining the order in that classroom. Having pencil boxes 3 or 4 places around the classroom, assuming that you use your supplies in common, which is typical in a Montessori classroom, that's going to make it more likely that those students are going to be able to put the pencils where they belong. Look for ways to make it easy for them to be good citizens in the classroom from right off the bat. Now, the strategy that I'm going to mention now to manage a class that's got maybe some children that have no idea how to choose their work, sustain their attention, and go on to their next task, and who, as a result, are disturbing others who have mastered that skill, my suggestion is take them outside. If you are fortunate enough to have a situation where you have a classroom assistant and that is an option, send part of the children outside while the ones who are in the classroom are able to just keep sustaining their work. Better to take them out than try and run after them and keep them from interrupting those who are able to work successfully. Now, a couple of ways that I'm going to suggest for doing this are very curriculum based. This is a cloud chart. It's one from a book that I cut out. If you've seen some of my other segments about prepping for the classroom, you know I believe in cutting books up to make Montessori materials. I love this cloud chart because it actually shows the clouds based on how high they are in the sky. It also talks about the history of naming the clouds, because I cut my chart from a couple of different books and a couple of different sources. This is a real nice kind of a chart to take out with the children and let them start to learn the clouds. That is a great thing that your assistant can do. I do encourage teaching children how to use tools appropriately. So if you are able to find some nice, inexpensive binoculars, this will help them with that kind of focused observation outside, clouds, birds, anything up a pie in the sky that you would want them to be focusing on. If you're taking them out to observe insects, maybe the flaking in rocks, then your magnifying glasses can do the same thing. If you are in what I call a transition classroom, I encourage you to use your creativity, use your understanding of Montessori to draw all of the children in, help all of the children feel successful, and allow your classroom to, over time, become a completely authentic Montessori environment.